Biblical canon is a messy topic, less so because of the topic itself than because it tends to be little known or understood outside of specific academic or religious circles. The Bible is the Bible, right? It's complicated. There's more to it. The Bible didn't descend fully formed from the sky. It was put together over time by different people and different canons, that is, different interpretations of what counts as scripture, exist. The 4 Gospels that most people know are just the ones that made it in, but plenty of others existed that were regarded as authoritative scripture at one time or another. Canon partly was decided by the Synod of Hippo in the late 300s, a group of bishops who decided what made it in based on a variety of factors. Plenty of works didn't get included, Gospels or otherwise. First, a brief explanation of the word gospel. In essence, the word gospel is a derivation from the Saxon translation of evangelion, which means good news in English. The word itself refers to the central message of Christianity and in no way implies that it is limited to the 4 canonical Gospels. These are some of the Gospels that didn't make the cut, for whatever reason. The Infancy Gospel of Thomas is one of the better known of these Gospels. Called Infancy Gospel because it tells various stories of the life of Jesus between the ages of 5 and 12, it was a very popular work. There were lots of manuscripts, but they tend to differ radically. It shows Jesus as having his power and knowledge from childhood, and as such is sometimes considered Gnostic, though Gnostic works have a ridiculously detailed cosmology that doesn't show up here at all. We don't know for sure when it was originally written, but sometime in the 1st century seems to be the most widely accepted date. There's a reason this one didn't make the cut. It's kinda like a horror movie. Jesus has a body count by the end of it. Some of the events include Jesus withering another kid, seemingly aging him rapidly, Jesus killing a kid who runs into him, Jesus blinding people who are accusing him, Jesus humiliating a teacher with a weird allegorical explanation of the Greek alphabet, and a couple of different resurrections, among other things. First referenced by the church father Origen, the Gospel of Peter was largely lost to history until it was rediscovered in the 1800s. It's a very typical gospel in a lot of ways, being a retelling of the Passion and Resurrection. Nothing all that out of the ordinary there. However, it's very anti-Semitic, and focused on vilifying the Jewish people above all else, completely absolving the Romans. One of the major structural differences from a typical gospel is that it shows Jesus exiting the tomb, supported by beings that seem to be angels. This is probably the most bizarre part of it. When they come out of the tomb, with 2 of them holding him up, the heads of 2 of them reach the sky, while the head of the other reaches above the sky, and a cross follows them. Then someone comes from the sky and enters the tomb. Mary Magdalene and her friends then go to find the tomb open, go in, find a man in bright clothes who tell them that Jesus has risen and left. They then flee, and Simon Peter and his brother Andrew go fishing. But that's where it ends, just on that odd note. This makes me think that we're probably missing large portions of it. The Gospel of Judas is a very non-traditional work as far as Gospels are concerned. It's a complete Gospel and was rediscovered in 1945 as part of the Nag Hammadi Library discovery. The manuscript itself, written in Coptic, dates from the 4th century, and the work was mentioned by Irenaeus, one of the early church fathers, in the 100s AD. It's very Gnostic in nature, to the point where it's barely comprehensible to anyone without a thorough grounding in those beliefs. The focus, as shown from the title, is on Judas, who is portrayed as being set apart from the other disciples. The Gnostic teachings imparted by Jesus are the major point of the work, and the crucifixion isn't described. The work is mostly a series of dialogues between Judas and Jesus during Passover week. The structure is overall fairly confusing, and I'm not entirely sure that it's meant to be linear. It starts off with Jesus gathering the disciples, and then when Jesus tells them that none of them know him, Judas says that he's from the Aeon of Barbella, the first emanation of God in Gnostic cosmogony. Jesus says that he'll tell Judas the mysteries of the kingdom, but he then leaves. Then he comes back and tells them that no one born of this Aeon will see the holy generation. Honestly, it just kind of goes on like that, with a lot of different visions, as well as the Gnostic version of the creation story spoken about by Jesus, and Judas and Jesus discussing the nature of the human spirit, baptism, and 𝘂𝐫𝐞𝐝, another name for the demiurge, the entity that maintains creation in Gnostic beliefs. It ends with Judas betraying Jesus for money. It's just overall odd, which is probably why it wasn't included. It doesn't really match with even any of the other Gospels that didn't make it, being so very steeped in Gnosticism. The Gospel of Mary is a very short gospel that takes place after the resurrection and before the disciples scatter to go preach. It was written in Coptic and, as far as we know, unknown to the early church. We didn't even rediscover it until the late 1800s, and large portions are missing. What we do know about it is that it's heavily Gnostic in nature, and it makes no sense to anyone without an understanding of those beliefs. It opens with Jesus discussing matter dissolving and the nature of sin, then sending his disciples to preach. This disturbs them, and Mary calms them. Peter asks Mary to tell them the things that Jesus taught her, and Mary talks about having a vision and describes the ascent of a soul through the 7 authorities of wrath. Andrew and Peter then dispute her story, and Levi defends her, and they go out and preach. Similar to the Gospel of Judas, it's relatively easy to see why this one didn't make it in. Even though there are large portions of it missing, we can still see a lot of the Gnostic influence in there. This is probably one of the things that kept it from being considered canonical scripture. So these 4 works are Gospels. They do exactly what the word gospel implies. They try to show the central message of the religion, though they all seem to disagree on what that message is. Each one, and these are far from all of them, had features that were deemed inappropriate for inclusion in canon, but that doesn't make them any less gospel. Like I said, biblical canon is a messy topic, but I hope it's been at least somewhat edifying. If you're interested in seeing these for yourself or in reading further, I've included some links in the description below.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe.